Hello friends and welcome. I'm Sarah Liz and I'm back with another emergency card kit. I have two pretty quick cards. One's a fun fold and then I have a fancy card, and I wanted some sentiments to go with this retro kitchen theme, so I made you a free download to go with it. Let's take a look at this kit. These are kitchen shenanigans. All of this is completely free, and we have all these sentiments that when you cut them out will fit on a 3" by 1" mat. At that size, you're going to have some extra white space on that left-hand side, so you can tuck it underneath an ephemera piece or underneath some die cut, something like that. If you don't want that extra white piece, there is an optional cut line right on the top and bottom for each of them. That would give you a sentiment that will fit on a 2" by 1" mat. So we have wishing you a happy birthday. You take the cake. Good moms let you lick the beaters. Have a sweet birthday. Stirring up birthday trouble. Sending a crock of birthday wishes. One day you're young and fun. The next you're excited about vintage cookware. Stirring up birthday joy. Today is a recipe for happiness. Many people have eaten here. Most have gone on to live perfectly normal lives. Happy birthday. Who'd you pay to make your house look like that? One day you're young and fun. The next you're excited about a crackpot recipe. So all of those sentiments, and then we have four sort of vintage-y ephemera pieces are on a single page. That PDF is linked in the description box below the video. All I ask is that you subscribe to my channel. It's part of my mission to make card making more affordable and more accessible for everyone. If this is not your favorite theme, go ahead and look in the description box below the video. Just click more or show more, and you will find the emergency card kit playlist that has over 70 different emergency card kits in tons of different themes, so you can find sentiments for all your favorite card projects. All right, let's take a quick peek at card number 1. This is our little fun fold, and it's got this pop-up sentiment. I'm thinking about making this style of card for my card swaps for paper Ganza. Let me know what you think. But we're starting with this folded love note from Hero Arts. And so I have already cut this and I folded it, but I'll kind of show you how it goes together. So I begin by folding on the diagonal score lines, and these should meet up perfectly in the middle, so I get this big triangle. Whatever's in the middle right now is going to be the inside of my card. Then I'll do the other two diagonal score lines, and again, I make a big triangle. I'll flip the whole thing over and fold on those vertical score lines so that they meet in the middle. So then it just sort of folds itself up into this tidy little package. It's super quick and easy, and I love making it out of pattern paper. Next, I'm just grabbing like emergency card essentials dies. Okay, so the largest scallop circle is about 2.5 inches. Then the lavender circle is 2 inches. And then I have a 1 3/4 inch circle. That's the same size as our standard emergency sentiments. If you're new here, I release free printable sentiments in that size every first and third Friday of the month. And so I have this little mixer. Okay, so we're going to work with that whole die set a little bit later, and I'll show you the whole thing. But for now, I will say I colored in the beater silver with a paint pen, but we're going to cover it up with the bowl. So I cut that out, but just know you can use a paint pen. And then I made sure I had glue all over the vellum on the bowl because you can see through it. But as long as the glue layer is even, you don't notice it near as much. So I'm just centering all that. But you could use ephemera here. You could use some printable images like from our kit, and that would be super cute. I'm going to add this onto our little note bundle, and I'm only putting glue on half of it. I'm using my fingers to remind me of where that glue is. And then I will put it on half of the front of our card, right? Because it's got that little split in the middle. Then I have some 3/8 inch Velcro dots. I love these. There's a white side and a clear side. To put the white side on the back of the white circle, and then the clear side will go on the pattern paper, and you hardly even notice it. So you could leave it just like this, but I'm going to step up the inside a little bit. I have a 2.5 inch purple mat and a 2 inch square, so I can sort of give myself a place to write, but draw some attention to it, draw your eye, and then I'll glue that into the middle, and I get a lovely white border all the way around. I've used this love note before and released a whole set of like birthday sentiments and things to go with it, so I will link that in the description box below. Here I have my 2 inch by 1 inch pink mat, and I cut one that's just a little bit bigger to go around it. I didn't measure it, y'all guys, I didn't measure it. And I am centering that on my diamond, and I am just folding in one side, and I'm making a mark of where that triangle is going to overlap my rectangle. This is on the back, okay? And then I'm going to double check. It's right centered in there. I'm folding it down. Yes, it's covering all my pencil lines. And then I'm going to add glue just to that little bit of it. I'm using my finger to remove any excess, and then I will fold that down onto my rectangle. And now I have this really great pop-up situation where I can put one of my new sentiments and it will all fold up. You guys, I love this. So here are the new sentiments, right? And I am going to use just the black tick marks. I am not using the optional tick marks, and I haven't cut the ephemera off of it yet. I will say I'm like 50-50. I'm not sure what the better way to do this is, but I want to keep all of these flaps. You could, at this point, cut off the ephemera, but you need to keep the tick marks. I like leaving the ephemera because it makes the whole piece a little sturdier as I'm sliding it through my trimmer, but then you have to be really careful as you're cutting these horizontal tick marks to make sure that you're not cutting into the ephemera. So it's kind of whatever works better for you, but I have all of these perfectly cut sentiments, but I am not tucking them behind anything. So I'm going to stick that in my trimmer and cut 1 inch off the left-hand side. That's it. Okay, that's where that optional cut line would have been. And then I'll stick this inside my card. It says, "Good moms let you lick the beaters." And that is card number 1. Super quick and easy. Again, I'm thinking about making these for paper organza. You could easily mass produce that. For this next card, I'm starting with just a big background stamp. And actually, I don't know that this one is still available anymore. I thought it was, but when I went to find links for everything for you guys, it looks like maybe it's been discontinued. It's called Blowing in the Wind from Hero Arts. They do incredible red rubber stamps. In fact, I just ordered a bunch of them. They were running a huge sale. It might still be going on. I'll link to it below and you can check and see. But I just am using some black pigment ink all over my stamp, and then I will stamp that onto an A2 panel. I am adding clear embossing powder here, but mostly because I'm too impatient to just dry the pigment ink. We're going to cover up most of this. You could totally skip this step. You could stamp with an ink that won't smear if you touch it right away. Somehow in my brain, this seemed easier. I have this little bitty clipboard I put it on, especially for large panels like this. I think it helps prevent some of that warping because it's being pressed against something really flat. But I just go really methodically from corner to corner, from top to bottom to make sure everything got melted. For my focal image, I have grabbed the Hero Arts Scalloped Rectangles Infinity Dies. You get a bunch of them, and you know I love a scallop. And then I just sort of eyeballed this piece of white shimmer paper and kept trimming it down until I had the same amount of scallops showing sort of all the way around it. I'm going to glue those two pieces together, and then we'll work on just some really simple die cuts. Look at this guy. This die set is huge. It's called Classic Casseroles, and you just get a boatload of like classic sort of Pyrex looking casserole dishes. I added some ink blending on here, but y'all, I'm not even sure you can tell by the time it's done, so you can skip that. But they come together really easily. Most of these have 3 pieces. Occasionally, there's an extra piece in there, but it will have a front and a back for the bottom, so you can get that really great sort of patterned detail. I thought about doing this in vintage colors, but I actually don't have a lot of muted tones in my cardstock collection. I tend towards bright colors. So let me know, what colors would you make these in? I just sometimes need a little push to try new color combinations. This one has then the 2 layers on the bottom and then this third accent piece. You could totally leave it off, but it's just this little strip. And I like that extra pop of color. Most of them, maybe all of them, have lids, so you can sort of stack them up like a bunch of wonky teacups, and I adore that. Then I have this purple one. He is 4 pieces, so I have the sort of detail piece for the front, and then the top, the lid, has this little ball that goes on it. You could steal that ball and put it on top of lots of them. I think there aren't very many that have this because you wouldn't be able to stack anything on top of that. But it doesn't mean you can't pretend and make your own. Okay, so I'm going to fiddle with this for, I don't know, 20 minutes. Decide where I want all of these pieces. In the end, they're just a little bit cattywampus. That feels right to me. There are tons and tons of sentiments that could go with this. But you guys, please know I'm always trying to think about how can the sentiments that I'm making for you be used with tons of other products. I know there are dozens, bajillions of options for cooking themed products out there. I have some other favorites that are like on my wish list. I might just make you a little link where you can go check out like a curated collection of the ones I think are the coolest. But these casserole dishes just slay me, and I love the size of them. These are great for putting in the circle for a tuck strip sentiment. A lot of them are going to fit perfectly in that 2-inch circle. And so for me, that's a quick and easy card. This one's pretty quick and easy as well. Our third card is going to get a little more involved. But I'm just gluing everything down with some wet glue. Again, now I have that 2-inch by 1-inch rectangle at the top, and I'm going to end up cutting that extra inch off of our tuck strip sentiment. I was so torn on which sentiment to pick for this one. I kind of like sending a crock of birthday wishes because the word crock cracks me up. Or the one day you're young and fun, the next you're excited about vintage cookware. I kind of am. So I'll just trim it off, and then I'll use my removable adhesive, or at least I think I am. You guys, I ran out of adhesive halfway through this, and when I went to replace it, I put permanent adhesive in there. I never do that. Whoops. But there's card number 2. If I want to replace that sentiment, I'll just glue right on top of it. That works just fine. And then here's card number 3. I love this one so much. We have this cabinet with our little glass doors, and then we've got a sentiment both outside and inside. So here is the die set we're working with. It's called the Classic Cabinet. And so we get the cabinet itself and then all this stuff that you can put in it. There's 2 different types of doors. You can actually skip the different doors and just cut that larger rectangle. But I cut some pieces of acetate to put behind the smaller doors. I cut them a little wrong. You're going to see there's some excess hanging out, but I'll just trim that later. I'm starting by flipping them over, and I'm adding Nuvo Deluxe adhesive. This is my favorite glue for slick things like acetate. And then I let them sit for a minute. Like I added all the glue first and then the acetate. It gives it a minute to start to set up, to get thicker, to dry. And then I get less oozage, which is great. And I am just going to use my fingers to line that up as best I can. 3 of my sides are great. All of these have one side that's a little too long. But again, I'll just use my scissors later. I'll trim those off. This will fit then on top of that large rectangle and its doors. If this is too fiddly for you, just skip the acetate. Next, I'm working on the score lines here for my doors. It's a very thin piece of cardstock that you're folding in half. So here's what I did to make that a little bit easier. I'm bringing in my ruler, and then I'm going to grab a scoring tool that has a pretty thin tip, and I'm just going to reinforce that score line. It will help it to fold a little better. Then once that's nice and burnished, I'm going to come in and I'm actually going to slide my ruler under the door and bring some cardstock into the other side. So I have even pressure all along both sides of that score line. And that did it. I just lifted up the ruler, it folded that paper, and it works beautifully. Okay. So this is just in case you really want your doors to open instead of just being sort of decorative. There's also like a shuttered door you can put on there, and then you might just leave it closed or glue it closed. I'm going to add a little bit of glue around each of the windows here, and I'm being careful to keep it inside that score line on the side, and it fits perfectly. I was worried that it wasn't going to open very well or it was going to overlap that score line. Nope, designed beautifully. So I'll do that to all 3. At this point, I realized it would have been easier to glue all my pieces inside the cabinet before I put the acetate on the doors, but it's too late now. So we're going to work with what we have. But if I were you, I would just leave that piece like sitting on top of the big base for the cabinet, add all your pieces inside, and then glue this onto the cabinet itself. There is a shelf you can add, and you want to add that before the larger piece because it is going to go all the way from one side to the other. I've seen some really great cards that just use that shelf like on a wall on the card, so it's fewer pieces. But I wanted to show you like what this set can do because I like all the small pieces, right? And I like to show you both. As I'm adding glue, I'm being very careful to stay on the outside of the score lines. Otherwise, my cabinet doors are kind of getting glued shut. And then I'll add, again, just a little in the middle, but that bottom door opens upward. If you flipped this whole thing over, you could make this look more like a bookcase than a cabinet. And I like that idea too. So I'm just using my fingers to line this up in the corners. I'm pressing firmly. Again, on some of these spots, it's just a thin little piece of cardstock, but this worked pretty well. So here, I'm going to open my doors to put my pieces inside, and they're not going to just stay open. That's sort of the challenge. And so I'm using my tweezers a lot. So if you do what I do and you put the acetate on there before you put your stuff in your cabinet, tweezers are your friend. I'm going to show you just some pieces of this, mostly because those doors make it a little tricky for you to see some things. They create some extra shadows. But the dies themselves that go in here are really simple. You're talking 2 pieces at most to put something together, and I really appreciate that. It's sort of why I was thinking like paper Ganza cards, because if I'm going to bulk produce, I think I need at least 10 for the card swap. If you're not familiar, Paper Ganza is the Craft Roulette live event that's coming up at the end of July. But I think they said you need, I don't know, 8 or 10, but there will be 150 people there. And so kind of depending on time, I might try to make 150 if I'm just putting like 2 little die cuts, like a mixer on each one. That's not that bad. Where if I was trying to put something more complicated that needed 10 die cuts put together, like I know I don't have time for that. So I like when you get small die cuts that are quick to put together where you can use just one small piece, the mixer, or there's a blender in here. You can make like a little cocktail card. There's all kinds of great things. I love these little canisters that are maybe for like sugar and flour and all that fun stuff. I put a vase and like a little pot that maybe has, I don't know, salt in it. Maybe that's a salt pot. These little plates. There's actually 2 different sizes of plates. So I'm alternating colors on these. And I'm, for a lot of these, just putting the glue straight into the cabinet so I can just hold everything open and pick them up with the wax tip of my pickup stick. That is a lifesaver. I'll put books in the bottom. There are 4 books and they're connected ever so slightly at the top and bottom of each book. And so just tiny little snips will separate those. So I ended up with 3, a pink, a blue, and a purple. I have some space left down at the bottom in the middle. I might put something else in there. I am not sure. I'm undecided, but I didn't want to overcrowd it. You guys know me. More is more, and that that usually serves me pretty well. But here I was like, you know what? We're going to pull back. We're going to pull back a little bit. But that's my cabinet. I forgot to mention I did add the little like doorknobs on there as well. They're just tiny little dies, but you could use a pen instead. Then I'm going to make a scene. So of course I'm going to make a scene. Can I even hear myself? I have a background stamp. This was just in my like bin of extra backgrounds. Again, it's a red rubber that stamps beautifully. And I have gray ink on light blue cardstock. This one is called a Rain Texture. And then there's this wood grain die set. I love this so much for floors. I've done this before with other products, but always this wood grain die. And I just added a little glue on the bottom, glued that on there to create my floor and trimmed it off with my trimmer. I could add like a baseboard, but I didn't want to create too much bulk at the bottom. So I'm just going to go ahead and glue this straight down. I'm making sure to add glue onto the feet. And it just barely fits on a landscape card, right? But I had other stuff I wanted to put on here. I couldn't figure out where I was going to put a sentiment on a portrait card. Like you can do it, but the rectangle doesn't look that great on a portrait card with something else that's also a rectangle. So again, a tuck strip sentiment 2 inches by 1 inch. We'll cut the white piece off the side. And then here's that shelf that goes in the cabinet. And I'm just going to have that coming out slightly from the side. I kind of wish it was coming out a little less, but it is what it is. It's already on there, right? Flip it over and trim off the excess. And then I have this little pot. Originally, he was on the bottom of my cabinet, and that's maybe why there's still space there. But he's just going to go, it's got to be a plastic plant, you guys. I can't keep a plant alive. So just know that this plant is probably fake. and then I will glue the whole thing onto my card base. So glue all over, and then this will fit right on top of there. I am going to do an inside sentiment as well. So the front is going to be like really sweet and awesome, and it's going to say happy birthday. And then on the inside, I will have a sub-sentiment that says, who'd you pay to make your house look like that? I imagine your craft room on the worst day, right? My craft room looks like that. The rest of the house is better, but it doesn't look like this card. It's not that tidy. But here it is. I love the way that acetate catches the light. The doors open. We have a sweet outside, a slightly sassy inside. My friends, I hope this is inspiring for you. If you're interested in that free printable, click on more or show more beneath the video to unpack the description box, and you'll find everything you need. All I ask is that you subscribe to my channel. Thank you all so much for spending your time with me, and I will see you next time.